Dear cynics and romantics, my name is Monice, and you are listening to the Romantic Cynic podcast. On this episode, I wanted to talk about how all of us, maybe at some point or another, have experienced what it's like to be single. And at times, we tend to focus on what we don't have versus being grateful for the things we do have. So I hope you join me on today's episode where we might mix in some laughter, maybe some tears, romance, and of course, some cynicism. Welcome to episode 28. I feel like it is easier to find the negativity, to be negative in every single aspect of our lives. You know, sometimes, well, maybe most of the time, we tend to focus on the things we don't have in life, whether it be a job, family, friends, a significant other, children, a house, anything you can absolutely think of. We as humans tend to think about the things that we don't have versus being just grateful for the things we do. It's a lot easier to go down a very negative path, especially with society, especially with everything that we see. You know, we see the fulfilling lives of others, especially on social media. And I think a lot of us tend to forget that what we see on social media, what we see in films, what we see on TV, what we hear, what we hear on maybe the news or what we see in an everyday situation, that is not always real. That's not accurate. That's not what real life is about. I know there are times I'm going to veering off a little bit off topic, but I've read articles and I've seen videos and clips and people saying, well, someone, say that you see a couple on social media and they have like the big gigantic house and they're absolutely gorgeous people. They seem to have everything together and they have the perfect lifestyle. I'm a big believer that if you have to showcase your perfect life on social media, more than likely it is far from the actual truth. There are stories where you hear about, a couple that will rent out, an Airbnb and do all the recording in this quote unquote, as if it's their own personal home, when in fact it isn't. And they just rent it out and film, their clips and their shorts or their TikTok videos for their audience. I think another thing we tend to forget is technology is developing consistently, nonstop, all the time. We see all these filters that are created for Instagram, and TikTok and things like that. And I think we always forget that sometimes what we see on social media isn't reality. I mean, yes, sometimes filters are fun to use. I mean, I've from time to time, I will play around with the filter just because sometimes they're just so ridiculous where I'm like, this is not a real person. This is not who I am. This is not what I look like. And to let you know, I'm not using any type of film. I'm not using any type of filter on as I film these episodes for my channel. But going back to like being grateful for what we have versus what we don't have. And I know sometimes when you're single, it feels like you might be surrounded by friends that, they're getting married, they have, significant others or having a baby, things like that. They're buying a house and you just see, you just see all these couples and it seems like it's a perfect relationship. It seems like, that's what life is all about. And I think sometimes we forget, that again, not everything what we see publicly is what is going on behind closed doors. With all my episodes, I love giving examples, especially for my own personal life. And I can say from my previous relationship with my marriage, I try to put on a front around others in public because I didn't want people to see just how miserable I was. I didn't want people to see how lonely I was. I didn't want people to think, negatively about me. I didn't want people to pity me for being in a relationship that just was completely incompatible, and I didn't want that type of pity from other people. So I know I would always put on, a smile on my face and appear as if I was in a healthy relationship. And in reality, I wasn't. I was in a miserable relationship, and I had going through some issues, from a mental health point of view because of how miserable I was. But yet I didn't want other people to see that personal side of me. And I think we can all agree we've all done that. Even when we're single, even when people are single, we don't want people to see maybe the misery that we experience every day. And it really goes back to, we tend to focus on the things that we don't have. And it's so easy to do that because we think that everyone around us is happy. And in reality, not everyone is happy. Everyone has their own individual issues. Every relationship has their own issues. And again, we don't see the issues from a public perspective. We only see what people want us to see publicly. I believe that there are three versions of us. There is the public version of us. There's the private version of us where we might show our family and friends. And then there's the internal version of us where it's who we are deep down, and we don't allow other people to see that side because of, it could be fear, or maybe we're embarrassed of that version of us, or sometimes that there's just a privacy that we are not comfortable, even with family and friends, where we might not be altogether comfortable showing that side of us, just because there has to be, we might feel there must be a little bit of privacy of who we are. I don't always think that's the healthiest, and I can only speak from my personal experience. I like the fact that my partner knows who I am on a very deep level. I like being able to be vulnerable, and to me, it's very freeing when I'm able to show that side to my partner because of the trust and the belief and the love that we have for each other. I know I digress just a little bit, but this really goes back to being grateful for what you have and not focusing on what you don't have. Turning or realizing that there is a positive in any given situation, no matter how dire it might seem, is going to be very important to your mental well-being, to your overall happiness. It's so easy and maybe even lazy a little bit to think negatively, just because it's so easy to go there. And sometimes when we're surrounded by constant negativity all the time, we just revert back to that. I feel like it takes a lot more work to be positive. It takes a lot more work to find the positive in all situations. And I think that even being grateful, even showing some type of gratitude for maybe some of those negative experiences, because maybe you learned something from them. I think it's important that we always learn something from everything that we do in life, and that includes, our mistakes and maybe our failures. If we can continue to learn from those and be grateful for those opportunities of self-growth, we hopefully at the end of the day we'll be happy for us individually. Especially those who say that they have nothing to be grateful for is really a sad indication of maybe your upbringing or maybe the things that you've experienced in life. Trying to challenge yourself every day and be grateful it can be tricky and it can be hard. And one exercise that I know sometimes I do in the morning is, as I'm getting ready for work or getting ready for the weekend, is just say 5 things you're grateful for. Say you're great. For me, for example, I'm grateful for my partner. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for the job I have. I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head. The more you start focusing on the things you have, the less stress you will go through and the less you'll think about what you don't have. I think it's important that we realize that we are given a beautiful gift of life. And I know at times it can be really hard emotionally, maybe even mentally, maybe even physically. It can be difficult, but realizing that your life is beautiful, your life is absolutely precious, and you should be able to make the most of it regardless of what other people are doing around you, regardless of what other people have. Just knowing that you are a beautiful person and you were brought here for a purpose, and living life to the fullest is going to make it, thinking about living life to the fullest is going to make your life so much more beautiful. And you'll be able to create your own happiness for yourself. And I think that's really important. When you're grateful for every little thing that makes you smile, everything that warms your heart up, and it makes your internal light that much brighter because you're able to focus on the things that you currently have. I know, there are times where, I'm not always the most positive person. I'm not the person that's always going to smile because I'm human and I go through my emotions, and I'll go through my little phases of like, hey, I'm just not feeling like myself, and I'm not feeling, mentally, well, in terms of maybe I just went down this rabbit hole of feeling sometimes sorry for myself, which I can admit because, again, I'm human and it's okay to feel like that every once in a while. But I don't think it's okay to feel like that all the time because it's really draining on who you are emotionally. It can be draining on other people around you. Not that I'm saying that you're a burden, but we have to really start focusing on our own happiness, and we can't always rely on other people. That's a big reality. We can't rely on other people. We cannot rely on outside forces to make us happy. We really have to work on finding the internal happiness in ourselves. If you, for example, say you're going on a trip and you already have this mental thought, like, I'm going to have a terrible time. Now, when you kind of put that out into the universe, guess what's going to happen? You're going to find every little thing that's going to make you miserable on this trip. You're going to find every little flaw. You're just going to have a miserable time. Now, if you go, now on the other hand, if you tell yourself, I'm going to have a great time, I'm going to experience some really good, atmospheres. I'm going to experience the life of the city. I'm going to, talk to a few people and get to know people that live there. You're going to have a really good experience because you are putting that energy out there. And, you're going to live in the moment and you're going to be grateful. And so that is what is ultimately important. And that is what is up to you, being just grateful for every little thing that you have. I know there are times where, especially if you are single, or maybe you've been single for a while, you've been single most of your life, sometimes you feel as if you yourself are lacking. Sometimes you're going to feel as if other people, there's no good about you that will attract people to you. And again, if you're consistently thinking that, it's going to take you to a very negative place very quickly, and you're going to be stuck there. And I think that is kind of a tragedy in life, where we can't focus on how others are making us feel, or the lack of others are making us feel. Being grateful for your family, being grateful for your friends, being grateful for you is key to not being so negative in the world, to not focus on the things that you don't have. I think that we have to learn to enrich ourselves by learning, by going out and trying new things. If you want to go, maybe you have a slight fear. I know I can speak for myself on this. Maybe you have a slight fear of heights, but you've always wanted to do maybe bungee jumping, for example. You don't necessarily have to do that, but if that's, something you would like to try, like challenge yourself and go out there and do something for yourself. If you are continuously doing things for yourself and finding things that are going to support you from a mental state, from an emotional state, maybe even from a physical state, it's important to focus on those things and focus on you. So I hope that you found a little bit of insight on just being grateful. Again, be always grateful, always find the positives, even when things seem super negative, even when things feel like as if there's no end in sight to negative things that you think come your way. Start believing that you are worthy. Start believing that there is someone that is going to love you for who you are. Start seeing that you have friends and you have family that love you already, and focus on those people. And just at the end of the day, just before you go to bed, just say 5 things that you are grateful for. And I wanted to end my podcast on a quote. I always like finding quotes for the topic at hand. And this one I found is by Zig Ziglar. And he says, "Gratitude is the healthiest of all human emotions. The more you express gratitude for what you have, the more likely you will have even more to express gratitude for." Thank you for listening. And as always, yours truly, the Romantic Cynic.